surprised.
Good evening, YouTube. It is me, Judge Jacquelyn, aka Mrs. Dave the Lawyer, here on a Friday night streaming with you. So we are continuing the hearing that we have been playing the last couple nights. It's a really long hearing. We still haven't gotten to the insider trading part. This is from the subcommittee of rules. And I am dressed like a judge. I'm in my official, this is actually an official judge's robe. I literally bought it on like an official website for judges' uniforms. I've always wanted to be a judge. It's like a life dream of mine. And, you know, maybe one day I will get to be a judge. But for tonight, I get to be a judge on my channel. And, you know, historically, YouTube live streaming for me has been a little bit quiet on a Friday night, so I wanted to spice things up. That's why I'm in full judge's attire. And I have my gavel, it's an official gavel as well. This is actually the same gavel that Mr. Dave would use on his streams. So yes, during the stream, I will be wearing my official judge's robe. I will have my official judge's gavel. And I'm going to try to hang on to this getup as long as possible. I mean, it is polyester, it's hot, and I am on my treadmill. So hopefully I'll be able to wear it most of the stream, but if it gets too hot, I'll have to take it off. But let's have fun tonight. If you see me on my phone, it's because I'm interacting with you guys in the chat. Let's keep the chat super fun. It's probably one of the best parts about live streaming is reading everybody's comments and interacting with all my subscribers and viewers. If you have not subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss any of our live streams, like, share with your friends, and check out the new membership options that we have. All right, let's get rocking and rolling.
That, you know, his request for a totally closed.
Well, you're the one who's making it worse, not better. So the grants would be one, and then we have additional amendments as it relates to the program that relates to the other part of the bill that's entirely, which as it relates to stock trading.
I'm just surprised that, you know, his request for a totally closed rule,
I'm not 65, not quite a Medicare age yet.
Well, it may also have to do, if I might, it also may have to do with amendments that could come forward by other members that mirror the voter ID requirements in the various states. In some states, you can use concealed weapons permits. You can almost always use student IDs. If you're trying to control who can vote, you have to make sure that there's no amendments because they might actually pass.
And just going back to the Olive Garden pasta bowl example, my understanding that you got to put down, in addition to an ID, $100.
I sincerely, guys,
so I hope what
you're
we're
referring
not trying to do here is kind of
Congressman
institute
on the screen,
another
not
poll
me.
tax, to actually make it costly for people to vote. And again, I asked the question about the grant program. Again, it was in the bill that you introduced. It was in the bill that you reported out of committee. It was the bill published in the rules website, and can't get an answer why it was removed. Can't get an answer who actually asked you to remove it. I guess there's some backroom deal going on, and some back room in the Capitol here trying to figure out how to make it more difficult for people to vote. You know, but I mean, because we have not yet to hear a good reason why it was taken out of this bill. But I mean, this is not the way you should be legislating, you know, on elections or protecting people's right to vote or on any of this stuff. I mean, this is just not the way you should do it.
Ma'am, if I might just make one other additional point. This bill is not going to pass the Senate. I think everyone in this room, anybody who's in the Capitol knows that. But you could find yourself in a position, let's say this did pass, President signed it, but the reconciliation didn't happen, which is also highly dubious. You could end up having this bill with no money in it. So efforts to provide people with free voter ID, any of that would be without any resources to be able to carry out.
We have no idea how that money in the reconciliation bill, if it would ever pass, would be used.
Like the stream,
I mean, yeah, I mean, this is scary. And this should not be a partisan issue. And not just Democrats, but Republicans in this chamber who give a damn about integrity in elections ought to be outraged by what's going on. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr.
Thank you,
Scott, for
Mr.
his
Chair,
time.
and I'm just listening to how ridiculous their argument is over not showing a photo ID. I literally showed a photo ID to buy Sudafed over the last couple of weeks, and they actually scanned the back of the ID to make sure that you can buy it. I also showed an ID to pick up some prescriptions for another member of mine the other day, and you know what? The people who were working behind the counter knew exactly who I was because we've been doing business there for a long, long time. Although with PBMs conducting themselves the way that they do, not sure how much longer those independent pharmacies are able to survive. That's a different issue, though. But I want to get to the stock issue. You know, Chairman Sile, you and I have had this discussion before. As you know, I had my Series 7 before I got here. I look at the
Christine, I'm waiting for the punchline. Where did Eve get that apple, Adam? Oh, are you trying to say that I have an Adam's apple or that I'm a man? I gotcha. No, guys, I'm sorry. You're on the wrong channel. I am a female, always have been. If you're looking for that kind of stuff on a Friday night, you're at the wrong place. So you may want to, hop on the Grindr or OnlyFans or wherever you get like your homosexual tranny porn, but it's not here.
bill. I'm going to vote for the bill. I want to bring up a couple of things, though, that I wish we could just do that I think would solve a lot of the problems. And you and I have had this discussion. I appreciate your time with that. I think
Dylan.
the
Nice to
issue
have
that
you
leads
here.
to the confusion
And hi, Dirty South and
is
Grizzly Bear.
the range
Velo. Nice to have
on
you.
the trade. So when you go and we fill out our disclosures, you have a range of 1,001 to 15,000, 15,001 to 50,000, 50,001 to 100,000, 100,001 to 250, 250 to 500, and it goes all the way up 5 million to 25 million. And sometimes when things get reported in blogs, if you will, just say you paid $14,000 for a stock, that falls in the 1 to 15,000 range. And if you sold it for 16,000, it falls in the 15 to 50. And so sometimes when they do their calculation, they'll say paid as little as $1,000 and sold it for as much as $50,000. And it certainly gives the perception, if that's happening on a regular basis, that there is tremendous amounts of insider trading going on in the halls of Congress. Now, let me be clear about this. There is at least one member of Congress that has been prosecuted for insider trading. Is that correct?
Yes.
I think they're just hating.
But if you look at this
they're bored. I
form,
don't
you can
know why
also
people
go
hate. So
down and you
silly.
can click other, exact amount.
Hi, Timothy.
And
nice
I just
to have
really
you.
think if members, and
Hi, Mark.
I
Nice
don't
to have
have
you
much
too.
stock.
Mr. Dave
I have
was
less than 10,000
just
left,
in
I think.
Minnesota last week.
But, I really think if we simply put the number of shares that were purchased and the price that it was purchased at, or the number of shares that were sold and the price that was sold at, it would eliminate a lot of the accusations. And just wondering if that was discussed. That's not a part of the bill, but I've actually started doing that when I do sell something sold X at this particular share value. Any thoughts on that?
You bring up a great point. When Congress passed the Stock Act 15 years ago, it was largely a disclosure regime, and you correctly note that it gave large bands in which those reports would be made available. If an individual wants to try to make a persuasion off of returns on any of those given reports, especially under the rules of social media, if you will, one can sometimes tell a story that's inaccurate. I think that's a broader challenge with how the reporting regime under the Stock Act operates. This bill before us today is a little bit more laser focused in the aspect of insider trading. As you correctly noted, a member of Congress was held accountable for insider trading. Insider trading is already
Hi, Jim.
illegal and should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I think.
So what I've learned from the last few nights of us streaming this is like a 5-hour plus hearing. And honestly, we've only gone through a little over 2 hours, so we got a long way to go. But I've learned a lot. I've never actually listened to this committee before. And we've had so many people on these streams the last couple nights. I think one stream we had like over 400,000 people. So I'm really happy that like over 500,000 people have got to experience this hearing with me But anyways, the really interesting thing that I have found from the last couple of nights, just listening to the hearing and then doing some research, is that our government has a lot of varying definitions for fraud. And I have to assume that they have different definitions of insider trading as well. I think all of us, for the most part, are, familiar with Miss Nancy Pelosi. She was the Speaker of the House for years. And, she's known for having a really good trading history. Her portfolio beats the best of the best on Wall Street, okay? But she doesn't really get in trouble for insider trading. And you would think if anybody would get in trouble for insider trading, it'd be Nancy Pelosi, right? Because it's a really good account. She's made hundreds of millions of dollars with her husband in the last few years that she's been a congresswoman. But I think she's been a congresswoman for quite a few decades. But anyways, like I was saying, it seems like our government or our Congress has different definitions of things. So they have different definitions of fraud. I would assume that they have a different definition of inside trading. And the interesting thing is it seems to change depending on who is being accused of this crime, okay? It's very rare that anybody in the government gets in trouble for these things. And it also seems like if they want somebody to get in trouble, like outside the government, like people like you and I, that they piece things together in a way where maybe you didn't even think that you were committing a crime. But because the government wanted something against you or wanted you to be in trouble, maybe they didn't like what you said, maybe they didn't like what you do, maybe they didn't like who you voted for or who you supported, now you fit that definition that they've created at the time. So what I would really like to know and understand, and I don't know if we ever will, but what is the true definition of insider trading according to our government? So they said one of our congressmen had been convicted of it. I'm not sure who it is. I have to look that up. And maybe we can figure out what that person did to, be convicted of insider trading. Because I think when you and I look at people in office, look at the committees they're on, understand that they make the laws, they control what sectors of different industries go, basically. How is it not insider trading? I don't know that answer. I'd love to hear from you guys what you think it is, but it's just really interesting to me that the definition of these things is constantly changing. I think that it's really important if we're expected to follow the laws, that we know what they are. Because it's really blurry. It feels really blurry. And also, there's so many laws at this point. Most people don't even know what the laws are. And if you really do a deep dive, it's not just federal laws, because you have federal laws. Then you have state laws. Then you have county laws. Then you have city laws. And I think the statistic is most people commit 3 felonies a day, but they're not even aware of it, okay? So I just think that if we're supposed to follow the laws and be law-abiding citizens, number one, we need to know what the laws actually are, how to define them, so we can make sure we're following them. And two, I think that anybody that is an elected official or working for the government should be held to the same standard, right? That seems fair. I mean, I hate using that term, oh, it needs to be fair, it's not fair, because I've learned over the years that there's a lot of things that aren't fair. But I just think that nobody is above the law. I love that line, because it's true. Nobody should be above the law. Especially if you are a lawmaker if you're creating the laws, don't you think that you of all people should be following them? Right? That would make sense. But what we know about our Congress is they know how to make a budget, and they never, ever, ever can stick to their own budget. So do we really think that they're also following the laws that they create? I don't know. Let me know your opinion. Happy Friday, guys. Thanks for being here. Let's continue.
I think one of the challenges we see is prosecuting insider trading is actually really difficult. And so due to the scrutiny that's been placed on buying and selling individual shares of stock, I think there's an opportunity to simply put in place a bright line rule that prevents members of Congress from doing that. And in so doing, removing even the appearance of impropriety that an individual was engaged in a trade based on insider information.
So we're saying that you can't buy stock.
Individual shares of stock
Individual shares
upon being elected to Congress. That's accurate.
And so I want to, a lot of us have spouses that work. And I want to, if you work for companies, a lot of times the company 401k match may be done in stock in that company. This bill doesn't prohibit the working spouse from 401k matches or other things along those lines from continuing to work at that employer, does it?
Great question. So the spouse of a member as well as dependent children are restricted under this as it relates to buying and selling shares. The exception that you correctly note is what we call the spousal exception. So if that income is earned in the ordinary course, that is allowed. So if your spouse works for Coca-Cola and they give 1,000 shares of stock to every employee at that pay grade, your spouse would be able to earn that. And again, that goes back to the core concept here. The focus on this is not to prevent ownership of private assets.
Sure.
The focus on this is to prevent an individual member from profiting off of insider information. So if it's through the ordinary course of their business, almost by definition, your spouse is not engaged in a trade based on inside information garnered from the members' inside information.
And if
so we
your
allow that.
If your grandparents started a company that then got bought and bought again and ended up with shares of a company, you're not forced to liquidate them. You just can't buy more shares, correct?
That would be accurate.
Okay. And those shares are also disclosed on your financial disclosure, so people could see if you.
They would be.
Okay. So one of the other areas that I do have concerns about, and I'd like to submit for the record, actually a Wall Street Journal article, and if it wasn't the Wall Street Journal, I wouldn't pay much attention to it. I shouldn't say that, I guess, but it's probably true. There's not much journalism anymore out there. But the new Washington Temptation Inside Information and a Prediction Market Account. Are we doing anything to, and Mr. Chair, I'd like to submit for the record that Wall Street Journal article, just as we're having this discussion. Are we doing anything?
What was the date on that again?
I'll have to expand it with my eyes like they are. July the 16th.
All right, without
July
objection,
18th.
so ordered.
Are we addressing the poly market issue?
In the Committee on House Administration, which Member Morgan Griffith, the name tag is off right now, so as I looked right up there, you're not Miss Chairwoman Fox. Morgan Griffith joins us on the Committee on House Administration.
Okay.
We have a separate piece of legislation addressing that, not included in this bill before us today, but I think it's one absolutely worthy of our efforts.
I absolutely believe that there's probably more potential for abuse there than there is even in this with proper disclosure. We had a member a couple of years ago that when their spouse was going before Senate confirmation, it was revealed that there had been a fairly significant.
So this hearing is from July 21st of this year. It is the subcommittee on rules, and there's actually a bunch of different topics that they are reviewing. So right now, they're talking about the Stop Insider Trade legislation that they're trying to pass. This is a really long hearing. It's like over 5 hours, and we've only gotten like a little over 2 hours, and this is our third night streaming it. May even be the fourth night, actually. No, I think it's the third. But anyways, The other thing, you know what, guys, I'm getting like confused because we've streamed so many different things in the last few days. But right now, they're specifically talking about stopping insider trading. So that's what they're talking about right now.
Trade that had not been reported. Do you remember what I'm talking about? I'm not going to call the member, but
Oh, also, I am walking on a treadmill. I'm going to be walking the entire stream. That's my thing. I like to get my steps in during these streams. You know, I typically get anywhere from like 9,000 to 15,000 steps while I do these hearings. And did you guys know, like, the average American only gets in like under 4,000 steps a day? Our ancestors literally used to get at least 14 to 20,000 steps a day. And here in America, like, we're pretty unhealthy. Our obesity rate is very high. We're like the fattest country, maybe the second fattest, but we're definitely up there. Most people are really sedentary. So one of the reasons that I stream and I walk on my treadmill is to motivate you guys to get your steps in, just showing you that, you know, you don't have to have additional time. You can multitask. And actually, I have quite a few members that have contacted me and have been walking on their treadmill during the streams as well. I do have a membership. It's Mrs. Dave's Walking Club. So if you want support and want some like fun challenges and raffles and giveaways, I know I'm not supposed to say that on YouTube, but you can join. But it's really cool. Actually, 2 of my moderators this week bought a little walking pad. I get them off of Amazon. They're like under $100. They're portable, really easy to put together. But there's like no excuse when you have that. It's like an under the desk walking pad is what it's called. So like, I don't want to have to deal with like the heat, or it's too cold, or like right now it's at night. I wouldn't take a walk right now at night. It's not safe where I live. But I can be in the comfort of my studio, chatting with you guys, streaming a congressional hearing, and getting my daily steps in. So I hope that some of you guys get inspired to do this as well. Let's keep on going.
I don't know that I recall that, but I could envision that occurring.
so there was a member of the House who was going through the confirmation process, and then they went through an audit because of the Senate confirmation process, and in that comparison, they found a trade that had not been disclosed. I guess one of my frustrations with this, and again, I support the legislation. I think the ban on buying is the right way to go with the solution. But I guess one of my frustrations with this, and I had another member, and they were being very critical of a Republican who had bought a bunch of stocks. I'm like, well, how do you know they bought the stocks? Because they filled out the disclosure. You know, the ones who don't fill out the disclosure are actually the ones that you probably, if they're out there, the ones that you need to be more worried about. Would that be a reasonable statement? That
It's a great question, because in a lot of these broader ethics regimes, it's either a disclosure regime or a prohibition regime. And the Stock Act passed 15 years ago was broadly a disclosure regime, which then brings to light the concern. This bill before us today, the Stop Insider Trading Act, has a specific prohibition which simply removes even the appearance of inappropriate action.
This bill is, I believe it's well thought and a big step in the right direction. The ban is limited to purchasing individual stocks from publicly traded companies. I do worry about private placements and the potential with private placements, and think that's something we probably need to address in the future. But I appreciate your work on this. I look forward to supporting it, and I think it's a broad step in the right direction.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Scanlon, for her time.
Thank you. I think we are way past the time where we need to be dealing with the fact that the public is broadly mistrustful of members of Congress or the president or the vice president dealing in the stock market, because it has not just provided the appearance of impropriety or the appearance of using government information for personal profit, but we've seen it actually occurring in real time and on an increasing basis, particularly with the White House. I mean, it's interesting that our colleagues mentioned that there actually was a member of Congress who was prosecuted for insider trading, a Republican member, but even after the courts held him accountable, he was pardoned by this president. So we're not seeing the kind of serious attention to preventing this kind of essentially insider trading from occurring. And the American people have had it. They are fed up with it. Congress needs to enact a comprehensive ban on members of Congress, as well as the president, the vice president, and members of their families from owning or trading individual stocks or having other financial dealings. And I agree with Mr. Scott. I know he's leaving now, but I agree that we should also be dealing with this with the prediction markets. But unfortunately, the bill that our colleagues are putting on the floor this week doesn't do any of that. The bill only prohibits members of Congress from purchasing additional stocks. Now, I have never traded stocks myself, but it's my understanding that the way you make money is when you sell the stocks. And this bill does not prohibit them from selling the stocks, and that's where the profit is made. And the public notice requirement in this bill is so weak.
What if we had real term limits, like 2 terms, just like the president, and during those terms, you don't get to trade. You don't get to trade, your spouse doesn't get to trade, your kids don't get to trade on your behalf. You just have to behave yourself if you're going to be a congressman or senator or president, vice president. Don't you guys think that that would work? I think so, right? Because the problem is when our lawmakers have a vested interest, now they're not working for us anymore. If they know that a decision, if they vote for a decision, maybe it's not the greatest for us and their constituents, but their stock will rise and they'll make a lot of money. I think most of these guys are going to vote to make a lot of money, unfortunately. But if they had term limits and they weren't allowed to trade during that term, I think this would prevent it. And maybe also it would turn away nefarious candidates. Because let's get real, there are definitely candidates that come into office for power and to do insider trading and to get kickbacks and all types of different things that we probably don't even know that goes on. My mom used to have a saying that went, you don't make an, I don't know exactly what it was, but it's to the effect like, don't make an honest person tempted to do something dishonest. And like, she told me this when I was like a little girl. We had like our cleaning girl here, and I had like $100 bill that I got like for my grandparents or something for a present. And I just left it on my counter, and she said to me, you know, you should put that away, go put that in your wallet, or let me take that from you and put it somewhere safe. And I said, well, why? Like, I trust our cleaning lady. Like, she's never taken anything from us. Like, what's the big deal? And she told me, you know what? I trust her too. She's wonderful. But why even put her in that position? Why even tempt her? Let's just put it away. We don't even have to think about it anymore. So I think about this in the context of what we're talking about. If you're going to be a politician, be a congressman or a senator, you need to have the public's best interest at heart. And if you're allowed to trade stocks and take these deals and enrich your family and yourself, you're probably not going to make the best decision for the people. So we should just eliminate that completely. Just eliminate it. And only people that are willing, you know, to be honest and be on their best behavior for 1 or 2 terms should come to the table. I think that would solve a lot of issues. What do you guys think?
It wouldn't prevent the kinds of transactions that have already eroded public trust. Things like a lawmaker unloading healthcare stocks that then promptly lost value after he voted in the big ugly bill last summer to to cut Medicare funding by billions and billions of dollars. If our Republican colleagues are serious about government accountability, we would have on the floor this week Ranking Member Morelli's Restore Trust in Government Act, which establishes a comprehensive ban on stock ownership and trading for members of Congress, the President, and the Vice President. Or as a backup, have the Restore Trust in Congress Act, co-led by our Rules colleague, Congressman Chip Roy, which at least would comprehensively prohibit members of Congress, if not the President and Vice President, from owning and trading individual stocks. Instead, after 18 months of unprecedented self-dealing and personal enrichment by members of the Trump administration, Republicans are choosing to ignore the most significant conflicts of interest in government while advancing legislation that barely scratches the surface. And if that weren't enough, they've combined this with this completely unrelated voter ID bill, which doesn't actually deal with any actual voter fraud, but instead suppresses votes. So we got to get this straight. Republicans are refusing.
I just think it's so stupid when she or any of them just make statements like this that are so wrong, so misleading. I do understand, but it's just so stupid to sit here and listen to them defend the fact that certain states do not require ID to vote and act like requiring a valid ID is suppressing votes. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. We've talked about this the last couple of nights, but you literally need your ID to get into most places. You can't travel in an airport without an ID. We talked about this last night because the left kept bringing this up, but apparently, if you want to go to Olive Garden and buy their $100 membership so you can go to the all-you-can-eat, pasta and breadstick night there or any night, you have to show your ID, okay? So Olive Garden has set this precedent. But Democrats think that that's just too much for the American people. That somehow showing an ID that you have to show almost everywhere, including to eat all-you-can-eat pasta at Olive Garden, is just too much for Democratic voters. They just can't do it, guys. And I've even I've even read some comments a few days ago about, it's expensive to get a driver's license. Okay, well, welcome to America. Welcome to America. That's the cost of doing business. You want to live in America and you want to drive or you want official ID, it's going to cost you. This is what we do here. You want to drive a car, you need to have a registration. And you have to update it every single year. That's just how we roll here in the United States. You want to have a dog? Okay, well, they need a tag every year. They need a rabies shot every year. That's what we do here. And sorry, you can't get around it. If you don't like it, go to another country that doesn't require all of these fees. We do in America. Everything is a fee, a registration, a license. This is what we do here, okay? But literally, there are people all over the world that would happily pay that money to be here in America. I am not stair-stepping, I'm on a treadmill. But anyways, I just think it's so lame, and it's the dumbest argument to continuously say that it's going to impair people from voting to show an ID. If you can't figure out how to get an official ID and show your ID to vote, you should not be voting, okay? Maybe we just need different and better standards for who can vote in America, okay? Maybe not everybody that's an American citizen should vote. Maybe we need to change that. Because if you can't figure out how to show your ID, I think that that's a problem. I think that's a much bigger problem.
Using to address this problem that actually exists, the president, his family, and some members of Congress getting rich off stocks whose value changes based on official government action, but instead they're pushing the SAVE Act, a bill that would prevent hundreds of thousands of American citizens from voting in order to satisfy the president's obsession about fictitious non-citizen voting. So the corruption is coming from inside the House, but it's the White House, and that's where our attention should be. Rep. Morelli, can you talk about why the requirements in the stock bill that Republicans have put forward is so inadequate, particularly when it allows them to continue to own and sell stocks?
Yeah, thanks, and I think you did a great job of summarizing. I mean, there's several problems with this bill. First of all, it does not require divestiture. You can still own stocks. You can sell them. You're not required to sell them at a particular time. So you can wait until the appropriate time when it benefits you to sell the stock. And it also allows you to buy additional stock of those companies that provide you with a dividend. So if you get a dividend from SpaceX, you can buy more SpaceX stock. So that's publicly traded. Second problem is it doesn't do anything with private sale or private stock. In fact, this isn't a hypothetical. Members of the House are trading in private stock, making massive profits from stocks in privately traded companies with federal contracts. It's happened. It's been highlighted. It's been detailed. And in those cases, some cases, they've done it with a company that was then purchased by SpaceX, a publicly traded company. So you can make a lot of money still. So you don't have to divest public stocks. You can own private stocks and continue to trade in those. Does nothing to rein in the crypto market whatsoever. And we know the president and his family have made billions of dollars in the crypto space. The president also purchased Warner Brothers corporate bonds at a time when Warner Brothers is in the middle of merger talks right now, over which the president's FCC will ultimately be able to make decisions. The president also failed on thousands of trades to acknowledge and disclose them within the time required under the law. In fact, the president trades stock more than all of the members of the House combined. The president of the United States, yet he's not even covered in this bill for reasons, well, I don't even know for what reasons. It is without realistic explanation why that would happen. And the other thing, which I agree with Mr. Scott, is the exclusion of the prediction markets is shocking. I mean, we see the abuses being reported every single day. You know, whether it's things about contracts or military strikes or some foolish things like when the White House press secretary is going to stop her press conferences to the minute and find that some people can trade on that. We know that it was reported over the weekend that Representative Luna shared with someone that J.D. Vance was going to be chosen as vice president because she had inside information, and she passed it along to someone with the express purpose of putting down a contract.
Okay, so Gabriel wrote, in Mexico, you have to show ID before you get to vote. So what is the big deal that America would like to do the same? Gabriel, 100%. I completely agree. Totally agree. I don't understand why it's a big deal. I really don't. Foxy Freya writes, it forces women mostly to have a document to prove name change. It would apply to anyone whose name differs from the birth certificate. It's cost prohibitive for many. So maybe that's something, so I'm not aware of that, Foxy, because maybe it's different in your state, but I know in my state, you know, you have to go, if you're changing your last name, you have to go through that process, pay the fees or whatever. But when you go to renew your driver's license, they ask you, you know, do you want your voter ID card? Or you can even like apply to register to vote rather. So we don't have that obstacle here, but it may in your state. I haven't heard that though. Greg, got it. Thank you.
In the prediction markets over whether or not it would be J.D. Vance, and that person profited handsomely from this. This is, to the point you made, if we have any hope of restoring trust in the American people in our government, we have to stop doing the things the president.
Okay, so Sanmi, I'm sorry if I'm not reading this correctly, Sanmi 45 1G, not only cost prohibitive, also difficult. It takes a long time and sometimes they've gone missing. So I think you're referring to getting your ID. Hold on, let me read the first part. Well, for one, a driver's license would not be sufficient for many voters. Instead, they'll have to dig up more obscure documents like original birth certificate, which can be an onerous process. Actually, it's really easy to get your birth certificate. So I live in Florida. A couple of years ago, we got flooded twice with Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton. And I had this safe box that I had everybody's birth certificates and social security cards in it. But long story short, it wasn't locked and all of my documents were destroyed completely. It was really easy to get a birth certificate. I just went to, there's like a website for my state, and I put in my information and my kids' information and, you know, paid whatever fee. It wasn't that expensive, and they mailed me new birth certificates. It was really easy. So maybe it's different in other states, but it was really easy. I want to say I got all the documents like within a week or two. And here's the thing too, like, it's not like these elections like come out of nowhere. We know when they are. You know, they're on the calendar for years. We know exactly when these elections are. So if you want to vote in one of these elections and you know that the laws are changing and you have to get certain IDs, just plan ahead. Just plan ahead. It's that easy. It really is.
President, the vice president, members of Congress, and the judiciary have to stop doing things where the public feels there's inside information that we have access to, in many cases that we do, and are profiting from it. And this is not that hard to do. There are bills, there's not.
You know, here in Florida too, and I don't know if other states have this, but let's say you want to go out of the country and you like messed up and you like either lost your passport or you didn't realize your passport expired, and this like happens all the time. You can go down to Miami in person and you can actually get a passport in like one day. I mean, you have to pay additional amount, you know, to expedite it, but they do have that service. It's not, you know, it doesn't take as long as you think. Typically, I think it takes like anywhere from like 6 weeks to 2 months when you apply. But in Miami, you can go and you can get your passport in a day. Also, too, they have new services out there where, you know, if you only have a couple weeks, I did this before, you can just pay extra and they'll expedite your passport. So this is totally a thing. It's not that hard to get ID. And I made this point the other night, and I just truly believe it. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of people disagree with me, but if you can't afford to pay for your official documents, maybe you should not be voting. Because there have been a lot of people in the comments who've written that driver's licenses are expensive. Well, like I said, that's the cost of doing business here in America. And we used to have laws that you couldn't even vote unless you owned property. You owned land. Only landowners could vote. Maybe we should go back to laws like that. If it's such an issue for people to get their basic documents in order to vote, maybe not everybody should be voting if it's this difficult. Because I don't think that they're asking a lot out of you guys. Maybe, you know what, I am entitled. I am an American citizen. I've lived here my entire life. I'm a third-generation American. I am very entitled. I am so proud to be an American citizen. I love my country, and I know I'm entitled. I know that this is the best country in the world, and most Americans are entitled. Most Americans have it so good. We don't even realize how good we have it until we visit other countries. But most Americans are super entitled. We are so freaking lucky to live in this country, and it is a privilege to vote. It's a right as well, but it also is a privilege because there are a lot of countries out there where you don't get a say. You have to do as you're told. And it really is a privilege that our country is the way it is, and we need to protect that. That is what makes America like so amazing. That's why people from other countries will literally spend every penny they have, save for years, to come to this country legally, start a business, because they know the opportunities that we have here in America. And we need to protect them. We need to protect them. We cannot get sucked in to this rhetoric that it's too hard to show your ID when you vote, because that is just going to have a domino effect. And I just don't see a very good future for us if we don't have safe, secure elections and people don't trust the election process. We're not going to be America anymore. And if you don't want to live in a country like that, if you don't want to live in a country that has safe elections, there are so many countries out there that you can move to, and you don't even get to vote. So just move there, but don't try to ruin it for the rest of us. I mean, America's 250 years old. Literally, it is the best country on earth. We have to protect that. And if we don't, it's going to go away. It's not going to be the United States of America anymore. So let's continue the stream.
Number that you referenced, we could do it in this bill. We'd need to take out the Save America Act provisions, which don't deserve to be in this bill, but we could change this, but require divestiture and private stock trades, and the crypto market participation and prediction markets. Let's give the American people the kind of government they deserve and that they want.
Yeah, it is just unbelievably concerning and offensive that folks are supposed to be public servants, supposed to be serving the people, not themselves, continue to be able to use information that they obtain as a result of government service in order to profit. Although we did see a new twist on that this week when the president announced that he will sell access to his Truth Social posts. If you can pay $100,000 or so, you will get early access to government action that will then move the market, so it is literally pay to play. If you pay off the president's social media company, you're going to be able to make more money because you'll have advance notice. I mean, it is a culture of corruption that is truly mind-boggling, and we need to put an end to it. You had something else?
Well, just then, the president is somehow under the idea that if you do things openly, publicly, it makes them okay. So if he told you he was going to rob your bank in the middle of the day.
Wait. This is exactly what Congress does, though. Oh my God, they always point the finger at the right and tell you exactly what they're doing. This is literally what our Congress does every day. Let's take, for example, Social Security. Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. If you look at what a Ponzi scheme is, Social Security, the way that we do Social Security, would literally fit that definition. It was supposed to be a fix for retirement for Americans where you put in money, that money went into an account, and it accrued interest. So over time, the account grew. And then when you went to retire, that money that you've been putting in all these years had grown in this account, and the U.S. would use it to distribute your retirement. So you don't have to worry about it. They're helping you out, right? Hi, PTSD. Anyways, that's not how Social Security is anymore. It was only like that for a few years. It was enacted, I think, in 1933, and by 1939, we were using it like a bad pyramid scheme, okay? So, but Congress tells you by definition, it's not a Ponzi scheme because they're telling you what they're doing. They don't consider it fraudulent. They don't consider it a Ponzi scheme because they're telling you that they're not investing that money. They're telling you that they are pulling from current people paying taxes into Social Security and giving it to Social Security recipients, okay? So by definition, they're saying, okay, it's not a crime, it's not fraudulent, it's not a Ponzi scheme because we're telling you what we're doing. So this is just comical that they're going to say that, oh, Trump and the right, they're doing this, this, and this, but they do the exact same thing. And I'm not saying that, I don't know what Trump's doing. I mean, they've been throwing out a lot of things during this hearing and other hearings. I really don't know much about it. But I don't really believe the left. I certainly don't believe mainstream media. So I tend to believe that anything that they're saying is either completely fabricated or it's exactly what they're doing, because their move is always to accuse the other side of doing exactly what they're doing. And maybe they think it takes the guilt off of them because they're telling you what they're doing. So that makes it okay somehow. But I just think it's comical that they would say that because they literally do the same thing.
And, filmed it while he was robbing your bank, that somehow that's no longer a crime because he told you he was going to do it. So developing for Truth Social, where he's going to give inside information to people who will pay significant amount of money. So you're only doing it for economic advantages. There's no other reason to have the app. But think about this. In the 21st century, the United States Congress is going to sit and allow the President of the United States, who makes market-making decisions every single hour, is going to allow that person to sell that information to private investors who will pay him for it, and we're just going to sit here and go, okay, that's okay? I mean, does anybody in America think that's okay other than the members of Congress who are unwilling to stand up to him?
Well, I'd suggest that this Congress will say it's okay, but hopefully the next one won't. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize the other gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to congratulate my friend Chairman Stile on bringing this legislation before us and the work that she put into this topic to deliver a really impressive piece of legislation. I'm curious, could you explain to this committee, from your perspective, what are people voting against when they vote against this legislation this week?
Well, I think that's important to know. We hear a lot from our friends across the aisle what they would do if they were in charge. They were in charge and they didn't bring any of this. So you get a pretty good idea what they're going to do. Absolutely nothing. This bill in front of us is an opportunity to ban members of Congress from buying individual shares of stock. And when this comes to this committee for a vote to give us a rule, if we're successful, I think we will be, we'll be on the floor. And if members vote against it, they're allowing members to buy and trade individual shares of stock as they are today. I think this is our opportunity actually for the most comprehensive and important piece of ethics reform in the House that we've seen in probably over 10 years. This bill before us is substantive. It works. It has broad support. And I think we got an opportunity to make a huge change. And folks that choose to vote against it can go home and explain to their constituents why they think members of Congress should be able to buy individual shares of stock. And two, on the other side with photo identification, this is our opportunity to make sure that all 50 states have photo ID when individuals go to the polls. It's a pretty straightforward, easy concept. It's popular because it's common sense. American people understand that we need to have basic common sense election integrity. And you either support election integrity or you think that you should just be able to walk in, as they do in the state of Minnesota, and vouch for up to 8 people to cast their ballot.
Did you guys see what James O'Keefe did last week? It's like been all over social media. So James O'Keefe, if you don't know, he's a journalist that goes undercover often. So there's videos that are circulating of him in Minnesota with another journalist. And they're dressed like full on Islamic costume. I don't know what you would call it. But apparently they were just trying to prove that there really is a law that exists in Minnesota where you can go into a poll, and when you go to vote, you don't actually need to have your ID. If you're with somebody that has their ID, they can vouch for you, and they can actually vouch for up to 8 people. This is real. Yep, PTSD. He created Project Veritas, but now he has his own company. But this is real, and he's on camera in Minnesota showing that this is a real rule. You guys don't think that that's an issue. You think that it's okay that you could just vouch for somebody. You don't need your ID to prove that it's you, and you could just vouch for 8 people. That's enough. That wouldn't work if I went to a liquor store. If I went to a liquor store with 8 friends and we all wanted to buy liquor, my one ID, that's not going to help them. They're not going to be able to buy their Tito's for the night, right? Because you have to show your own ID in most every situation. So I don't understand why this is okay. Why this is such a weird rule. Why 8 people? Why? Why is this okay? It's not okay. It's not okay. It's a joke. Like, it's a joke. And we need to take voting a little bit more seriously. Like, we just cannot allow these rules in these states. They're going to destroy America. We're not going to be having real elections if this continues. Exactly, Scotty, exactly. Why, Scotty writes, why 6 feet during COVID? Why? Because Fauci's the devil, 666? I don't know. But Fauci has admitted in his diary, 6 feet is a made up number. Completely made up, okay? Totally made up. Trust the science, guys. Made up, okay? It's craziness.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I just submit, not only is banning stock trading for members of Congress wildly popular if you poll Americans, so too are some of these common sense requirements with respect to voting. So this should be a wildly popular bill. I hope the vote later this week reflects that, and I will yield back to our distinguished chairman, Mr. Griffith. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse, for his time of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Stile and Ranking Member Morelli, for being here and for your testimony. Chairman Stile, so the name of your bill is the Stop Insider Trading Act, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You think that's an accurate description of the bill?
Yeah.
Okay. What does trading mean to you?
The buying and selling for profit.
The buying and selling for profit. I couldn't agree with you more. Webster's dictionary defines it as the business of buying and selling. This bill, as you said, bans the buying of individual shares of stock, right?
That's correct.
It does not ban the selling.
It reforms the selling, of course.
It does
makes
not
changes.
ban the selling, right? You're allowed to sell as much stock as you would like as a member of Congress under this bill. Is that wrong?
I think it's insufficient to describe it that way, that what you said is accurate but misleading.
It is accurate, yes.
But misleading.
Correct. Yes, it is accurate.
Accurate but
so
misleading,
let's say
yes.
there's a Republican senator who decides that they're going to sell millions of dollars of stock the week before the COVID-19 pandemic begins in earnest. That's legal under your bill, right?
Of course, they would have provided a minimum of 7 days advance
Correct.
notice. I'm
And
not
that would
sure
be
that you
legal.
could do that in the timeline you just proposed.
And that would be legal under this. This isn't a hypothetical. A Republican senator, 7, 8 days before, 9 days before the COVID-19 pandemic began in earnest, sold millions of dollars of stock. Under this bill, that would not be illegal, right?
But of course, they would provide notice.
Yes,
That's the part that you don't want to discuss.
I understand the notice, but here's what I don't understand why
So-
you don't just, hold on, I'll give you a chance to explain this. You could defend it on the merits. You've clearly decided that the buying of stock, right, is a practice that you don't believe should be permitted by members of Congress. I agree.
Okay.
But for some reason, you've decided that the sale of stocks, individual stocks, is completely fine, but for the notice requirements that you've now imposed in this bill. And I don't quite understand that disconnect, because there are many bills that have been introduced, including a bill I introduced 7 years ago with Chip Roy and other members of this body that has 140 co-sponsors on it, that would ensure that the sale and the purchase of stocks is banned. And this bill does not do that. So I'm trying to understand why you've decided that it's permissible on one end but not the other.
Opportunity to
by all
respond?
means.
Great. So the focus of the bill is to stop an individual from being able to profit off of insider information. So that core concept of what is the bill's goal, I think, is really important. So let's go back to your example of an.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. Please. I want.
So let's go back. Let's go back to
That
the example
hypothetical.
of an individual that made a significant sale prior to the pandemic, because I think that's actually a very relevant discussion point.
So, Steve, hi Steve, you wrote, any politician that does not vote for voter ID needs to be kicked out of office. I agree. But Steve, spoiler alert, nobody on the left is going to vote for voter ID. The Democrats don't even come to hearings that talk about voter ID. James O'Keefe, we were just talking about him, and Nick Shirley a couple weeks ago, or a month ago, they were in the Senate talking about fraud, and James O'Keefe specifically about voting and fraudulent voting and all the issues that we're having with voter fraud. Nobody from the left showed up. Just couldn't be bothered. You know, they did not want to come to this hearing. And I thought about it for a while because I couldn't understand, like, why wouldn't they want to come to this hearing? Like, this isn't like a bipartisan issue. Like, everybody should want elections to be trustworthy, be fair and honest, right? You know, you would think. But then I really thought about it, and I thought about what I observed in 2020 during that election. I mean, that's another story in itself. But briefly, I'll just tell you, on election night in 2020, I flipped through all the channels, and I just could not see anything that was the same. You know, Fox, ABC, NBC, CNN, all the numbers were totally different. I couldn't differentiate it. I didn't know what was going on. So Mr. Dave, he actually worked in politics when we first met. He was campaign manager, finance director for different politicians or whatever. But anyways, he taught me that the best way to follow the polls is to go to the state, the Department of Elections website, okay? And you can watch in real time the votes being tallied. So what I did in 2020 on election night is I was paying attention to swing states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, I think Georgia, and a couple others. So I would like refresh my page like every 5 minutes to see, you know, where we were at with the election. Well, there were some really strange things that I noticed, and I wish that I got like screenshots or I made a video. But the one thing that really stood out to me is there were some states where he lost votes, you know, a couple hours later. That usually doesn't happen. That's really weird. Usually when they tally the votes, nobody's votes go down. You can't have less, it's only more. They're bringing in more. So I feel like I saw a lot of issues and a lot of weird stuff going on during that 2020 election, okay? So, but again, that's another story. But really thinking about it, like, why would the left not want to come to these hearings? And I have just concluded that they just have to cheat to win. They cannot win on merit. They have to cheat. That's the only way that the left really wins elections. I mean, you can try to prove me wrong. I mean, maybe in some really left counties they legitimately win, or maybe they win when there's no other candidates running against them. But I just think that for the most part, the Democratic Party is very different than it was 15 years ago, and they just have some really crazy ideologies that most Americans do not agree with whatsoever. I don't think that most Americans are radical. I think that most Americans are really in the middle, pretty moderate, and we want a lot of the same things, okay? So I just don't think that Democrats have great candidates in the last few years, and I think that the only way that they're winning is they have to cheat. So they don't want to be present during a hearing about voter fraud. Because they already know, you don't have to tell them, they already know what they're doing. And they're not going to vote for voter ID. They think it's racist, or they're trying to convince you, and some idiots in this chat are trying to agree with them. That I think is the funniest thing. Like, I expect these dumb comments from the left congressmen, okay? Like, they're all reading from a script that the party's given them, okay? So I expect it. But the thing that, no, I'm not bouncing, I'm on a treadmill, okay? But the thing that really gets me is people here in the comments defending these guys, defending the fact that we shouldn't have voter ID, that it's too hard for somebody to get a valid ID to vote, that's racist somehow, okay? That is what cracks me up. That's what makes me think, like, ooh, we're closer to idiocracy than we think. When there's people in this chat that are literally defending these dumbass clowns telling you that it's racist to have voter ID, okay? So, Steve, the point of that is, I agree with your comment 100%, but as we know, it's just not going to happen. They're not going to vote. Maybe Fetterman. Fetterman would probably be the only Dem that would vote that we need voter ID. But I truly think that Fetterman won on his own merit. I really like Fetterman. He's definitely the best the left has. He's great. I would vote, if I was in Pennsylvania, I would vote for him.
Inside of this. The point of the pre-disclosure is that it prevents the individual from being able to profit off of that sale because the information is now publicly available. So if an individual is in a leadership role, say they're the chair of the Intelligence Committee of the House or the Senate, that individual may have information leading up to a pandemic.
Sure.
Now, proving that information was inside, that's very difficult. I had noted that earlier. Proving illegal inside trades is actually very difficult for the Department of Justice. So my bill would require that you would provide an advanced disclosure of that. That would be, of course, market moving. It
Of
mirrors
the sale. Just of the notion of that you intend to sell this stock.
Right. That's
Yeah,
an
there's
accurate
no,
statement.
okay.
So walk you through the economics maybe. So
No, I understand the example. I'll reclaim my time here because I
fine.
wanted to give you ample opportunity here. If you're the chairman of the Intel Committee and today you come across information that compels you to sell $500,000 worth of stock in a particular company that you own, you make that disclosure under the style bill, right? 7 days, I think, or what's the notice requirement?
minimum 7.
Minimum 7 days. Okay. I don't know that that's necessarily going to draw the scrutiny of anybody in the public domain. And if
Well,
a
we
week
will
from now or
disagree
2
with
weeks
that.
from now, well, stock trades are made every day by members
Right,
of
well, in a
Congress.
public
Much
disclosure
to-
would be prima facie evidence of insider trading
Then
subject
why
to the
not do
jurisdiction
that on
of
the
the
purchase?
Department of Justice.
Then why not do that on the purchase? Why have you
Because there's
decided
no,
to
an
impose a
individual,
different standard?
that's actually a great question, Mr. Neguse. So what we're looking at is real-world situations where individuals enter Congress. So upon entering Congress, easy for all of us to agree, there should be no additional purchase of an individual share of stock. I think that's actually reasonably straightforward. You have made the choice to become a member of Congress. That's an obligation that we're placing upon you. An individual who is leading their private life, who is making reasonable savings for themselves and their family. Maybe they bought 100 shares. I used Coca-Cola earlier because we had the gentleman from Georgia here. 100 shares of Coca-Cola stock or any other good American company that's working hard. They're using that to maybe save up for down payment on a home, their wedding, their child's wedding. Now they arrive in Congress. The question then became, what do we do? How do we think through this and how do we address this? We share the goal of preventing that individual from benefiting off of any insider information. Of course, if an individual was leading up to a major global event and that individual's trade was noticed in advance rather than after, one, that would most likely be market moving, such that the profit would be removed, thus preventing the individual from making it.
I would just simply say, because I've got limited time, I would say that while I understand that there are members of your caucus, and frankly, members of the Democratic caucus as well, who have concerns about divestment of stocks that they already own, okay? I understand that That's a concern that's been expressed by some members. And so insofar as you're trying to address that concern, you've adopted this new paradigm that you've constructed. I would just say that that's the reason, and that it's not this argument. I just don't think that it's intellectually consistent. So I hear you. You've made the argument. You've made the argument, and so yeah, I'm sure my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will give you more time if you'd like. But I just don't think that that's an accurate argument. In my view, 140 members of this body, Republicans and Democrats, have clearly, unambiguously said we should ban the sale or purchase of stocks. Period. Full stop. And there's a bill by one of the members of this committee, this august committee, the Rules Committee, and I look forward to making an amendment to this bill that you proposed to perhaps consider substituting Mr. Roy's bill, which would accomplish what I've described. I want to make sure I'm understanding, as a technical matter, the ambit of this bill. Under this bill, can you purchase crypto holdings?
It makes no changes to the House rules in that regard.
So you can't or you can?
It makes no changes in this regard.
I don't, is it allowed
House
now?
rules still apply. You today are allowed to buy
Okay,
crypto
so
if
that's
you
all I'm
so
asking.
chose.
It's not a trick question. You're allowed to. Okay.
That's what I was saying.
Individual placements, because someone else referenced this previously, that can you do individual purchase of individual placements of stock under this?
Individual shares of stock, no.
Individual shares, no. Private placements, yes.
Right, current House rules would apply.
Correct. Okay.
Right.
So if it's easier, I'll frame it that way. I'll use
Yeah, current House rules apply.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
But what I want to make clear to people who are listening is
Sure.
there are significant restrictions in place under House rules. I wouldn't want somebody to
Okay.
walk away and think
Fine.
that no other rules apply.
Okay.
I
let
want to
me
make
frame
sure
it.
that they're clear that current House rules would apply.
Let's use your language.
Yeah, I think it's more accurate.
Under current House rules, members of Congress can buy crypto holdings, and under your bill, that does not change, right?
There's no change.
Okay, and under current House rules, members of Congress can buy stocks through private placements, and under your bill, that does not change, right?
No change.
Okay, and under current House rules, members of Congress can buy stocks, can buy industry-specific mutual funds, right?
That's accurate.
And that does not change under your bill?
Does not change.
Okay, and under current House rules, members of Congress can buy bonds, right? And under your bill, that does not change.
We still buy bonds.
And there are countless other pieces of legislation that members of Congress have introduced, myself included, that would ban all of what I just described. That is the point. I would say, with respect to Mr. Morelli's comment about the prediction markets, I do not understand, and perhaps you can illuminate this for me. The House Administration Committee has jurisdiction over member participation in prediction markets, right?
That's accurate.
Okay, you're the chair.
Along with others, but yes.
But
We're one
you've
of
got
them.
principal jurisdiction.
Yes.
You're in charge. Okay. 4 months ago, the United States Senate, on a bipartisan basis, on a voice vote, took action and said, you know what? No senator in this body is allowed to make bets on prediction markets. Every Republican, every Democrat agreed to it. Why can't we?
We have moved forward legislation, the Committee on House Administration, on this topic.
Let's
I look
do it
forward
today.
to. I'd be.
Why can't we? I'm saying this happened in April.
No,
We could do a one-page
yeah.
resolution. We could just literally cut and paste the Senate resolution, and we could pass
Yeah.
it tomorrow. Will you help us with that?
Yeah, so I've been supportive of making restrictions in the prediction market space.
Why isn't it in this bill?
We have two different pieces of legislation. We moved through, obviously, prediction markets are a reasonably new and novel technology available to American people.
It took the Senate
So
a day. It's a one-page resolution. It literally
don't-
is a paragraph. It just says members of the Senate are banned from participating in prediction.
I'm fully supportive of my legislation moving forward, if that's the question.
No, the question is, well, I guess I'll follow with Mr. Morelli, and maybe, Mr. Morelli, I would encourage, I know you've been pushing on this, but maybe we can just write a one-page resolution. We'll just take the Senate resolution, go to the floor this week, and apparently, according to Mr. Stile, that would meet with his approval. All right, am I wrong? Is that not something that you all have been able to debate in the committee? Mr. Morelli.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. We can do by resolution and have it apply to House members and House family members of families of House members, dependents, and do just exactly what the Senate did. The alternative is to do it in a bill which isn't even in front of us for reasons that completely escape my understanding there should be a provision in this bill, as bad as this bill is, how would you not include the prediction markets? But yes, to your point, we could do a resolution, doesn't have to pass the Senate, doesn't have to have the president sign it. We can do a resolution pertaining simply to the House. We should do that today.
I couldn't agree more, and I would hope that the majority Republican House would perhaps emulate what your colleagues in the upper chamber did under John Thune and simply say, instead of the delay and the dilatory tactics and everything else, we're just going to ban it. And you'll certainly have my support, and I suspect you'll have a lot of Democrats who would agree with you. I do want to talk about, very briefly, because the chair has indulged me so, here on the vote, what's it called, the Save Vote Act?
And normally you say y'all get to go on forever and ever because you have less people, but today you have more.
Well, you don't want to tempt me here, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chairman.
If you can make it quick, please.
Very quick question on the Save America, I don't know if we're calling it the reduced version or what. What's this new version called? Save America Life? What is it? Isn't there a title of it? The voter ID or what? Or Section 3 of the bill. Okay. So my understanding is that in Wisconsin, the voters approved by constitutional amendment, essentially a codification of the voter ID law that had already been on the books in Wisconsin, right? Okay.
That's accurate.
And National Conference of State Legislatures has described Wisconsin's constitutional measure, which is the same as the statutory measure, as the most restrictive in the country. I don't know if you've seen that. But
I don't know if it's I've not seen that term, but it's a reasonably good photo ID law.
Reasonably good photo ID law. Under that law, you can use a college ID. Mm-hmm. And under your bill, you can't.
Correct.
And I'm trying to understand why, if that, as you said, reasonably good standard is good enough for your constituents and the people that you represent in Wisconsin. There are plenty of constituents of yours at a variety of different colleges and universities that you represent that right now comply with what has been described by others as the most strict voter ID law in the country by using their college ID, but their congressman is championing a bill that would tell them that they no longer can do that. I don't understand that.
Sure, great question. Universities across the country, including in my home state, issue IDs to non-citizens, issue IDs to illegal immigrants, as many states do, many of them blue states. The state next to me, the state of Illinois, issues driver's licenses, for example, to non-citizens and including illegal immigrants. And so this is a standard to say, how do we make sure that we're protecting the integrity of our elections? And we believe the best way to do that is through the forms of ID as listed in the bill.
So the Wisconsin standard really isn't the reasonable, I think the word you used was reasonably good standard.
Yes.
That doesn't sound like, it sounds like it's...
I don't think the standard to get a student ID is nearly as sufficient.
No, I didn't ask you that. I said the Wisconsin law,
Right.
that 62% of the voters of Wisconsin a year and a half ago decided they'd put in the state constitution that you 5 minutes ago described as a reasonably fair standard,
I'd say
apparently did not meet
Well, it's definitely
the muster here at the federal level.
Well, sure. The Wisconsin standard is way better than a lot of other states. I mean, a lot of states have nothing. In the state of Minnesota, next to my home state, you can vouch for 8 people. I think that's disastrous.
Why not emulate it?
Compared.
Okay, so, yeah, and Andy have been talking about Trump and felonies. And yeah, I think Z2, felons are somehow allowed in the highest office in the land, but other felons can't get one. And Andy writes 34 felonies. So I really want you guys to look for yourself, look at what Trump was convicted of, and look at the wording of the sentencing, okay? Because in the sentencing, it specifically stipulated that, yeah, he was convicted of the 34 felonies, but he didn't have to serve any prison time, any probation, any fines, or anything like that. And in the stipulations, it literally wrote that he can continue to run for office, win, and serve. Okay, that's like in the stipulation. So please just go look at it for yourself. Like, don't you think that that's weird? Don't you think that's weird that they would convict him of 34 felonies, but the judge, who was a left-leaning judge also, would just want something on paper. Maybe it was just a talking point so you people could, write 34 felonies over and over in a stranger's chat. But it doesn't feel like they're real crimes, right? It really does. It doesn't to me, right? But to the point that said about other felons, I have to agree with him. And I know this is probably an unpopular opinion, and I talked about this a couple nights ago, but I think that we are a little bit too strict with people that have been convicted of felonies and served their time. I actually think that it's unfair and unjust, and we need to change this in our laws, that once you're a convicted felon, you can't vote anymore. I think if you're convicted of a crime and you served your time, you went to prison, you paid your fines, you served your sentence, I don't think that you should be punished for the rest of your life. And for some people that have felonies on their record, they really are punished for the rest of their lives. Like, they have a hard time getting a job, they can't vote. There's a bunch of different career paths that they cannot go in because they have that felony. I don't think that that's just. I really do think, maybe with the exception of certain felonies, but I really think for the most part, if you've served your time and you've reformed your life, you're trying to get back on your feet, be a better citizen, I think that you should have all your rights back. I don't think that that's right, that you just blanket lose all of these rights because you have that conviction if you've served your time. That's just my opinion, though.
Well, because I don't want to look anything like
No,
Minnesota.
Wisconsin. I'm saying, why didn't you're the Wisconsin.
Because I actually think we can do better. Yeah, so I think Wisconsin beats most states, no doubt. I'm not uniquely familiar with your home state's voter laws, but I can tell you in the neighboring states next to Wisconsin, we got some disasters on our hands.
How much time do you have under this law, if you vote provisionally, if you don't have photo ID, to be able to then ensure that your vote still counts? What's the time span?
You'd reference back to your state law on that.
I thought the standard here was 3 days, or is that wrong?
Is it? Oh, it is 3 days. I apologize.
3 days.
I apologize.
Right, so-
Apologize. 3 days.
72
So,
hours.
right. So if you forget your ID,
You forget your ID,
Yeah.
you've got 72 hours,
that'd be accurate.
and if you don't do that, then your vote doesn't count. Right?
Right. You would not have cured your ballot.
Correct.
That's right.
Do you know what that time period is in Wisconsin?
Go ahead.
It's a lot longer.
Yeah. We also have
Lot
many
longer.
weeks of early voting. So an individual
I hear ya.
could go in and do their early in-person vote
I would-
safely in the state
I
of
would just
Wisconsin.
say,
And if you
Chairman
forgot it, you
Stile-
could show up day after day after day.
I would just simply say, obviously, I believe Colorado has a gold standard, but if it's good enough for the people of Wisconsin, I'm just, again, don't really understand why you would champion on the one hand the Wisconsin standard and then simultaneously propose a far more exact. In my view,
If the gentleman will give me the time, I'd be happy to answer the question.
We've
Yeah, you don't want to hear the
we've
answer.
probably beaten this horse to
Next person to write 34 felonies gets kicked out.
death here. So in any event, I thank you both.
Gentleman yields back.
I will yield back.
And now recognize myself, and I will beat that horse. Mr. Stile, is it not true that the individual states, while they have sovereignty under the United States of America, do not represent everybody in the nation?
That's right.
So Wisconsin has a great standard for Wisconsin, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we want Wisconsin student IDs changing federal policy. Isn't that accurate?
That's accurate. I wouldn't say that Wisconsin's is flawless. I'd just say it's better than other states.
State legislature says it's the best of the states. That doesn't mean it's the best that the United States can do for its federal elections. Am I not?
That's accurate.
There you go. Now, I got a couple other things, because y'all got into talking about some financial stuff that, I'm just a poor boy from Southwest Virginia, and I don't understand it all. I got to tell you, and I'm sure there's some people back home don't know what this is. Now, y'all that have money and are big time in the
Okay, Zulu, you are the stupid one. Because maybe you don't understand how the First Amendment works. The First Amendment, freedom of speech. that applies to our government. Right now, you are currently in a private app, YouTube, and you are in my private stream, my private channel. I do not have to let you idiots say whatever stupid comments or nasty comments you want all night long. I'm not the government. So if you're in my private chat, you have to play by my rules. And that has nothing to do with freedom of speech, because freedom of speech applies to our government, okay? Maybe you didn't learn that in history or social studies, but you really should look up like how the First Amendment works, especially if you're gonna make a comment like that.
Financial world, maybe you do. What in the heck is a private placement? He said you can still do private placements. I don't even know what y'all talking about.
Yeah, it's not something I engage in, but under the House
What is
rules,
it?
individuals can own a host of different private assets.
All right, I don't know what is a private placement? He said you can buy
You
stuff.
could ask your colleague to describe private placement per his question if he'd like,
Maybe Mr. Morelli can answer. He seems
or
to know what it
terminology.
is.
No, I think there's just private offerings from companies that are not publicly traded, but are privately issued private stock.
All right, and so as both of you know, because that's what I was worried about, because it implied that the gentleman implied he wanted to get rid of that, but as you all know, having heard me talk about it, I got rid of all my $6,000 worth of stocks when the previous act was enacted, and the only thing I have is a small swimming pool entity that I have a ownership interest in. And if that's a private placement and we suddenly want to ban that, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Because that community pool might not exist if I hadn't bought a fair number of shares in it back in 1991. And I will confess, I sold a share this year. Sold is a loose term. Gave one to my youngest son when he turned 18. One of the shares that I own. So I understand there may be people doing big time stuff, but there's also a lot of people, if that's a private placement, there's a lot of people who are doing things in their community where they've got a little community pool or some other thing that's more, I mean, it makes money some years. We might even make money this year, but we didn't make money in a number of years as well. And the idea is to make sure that people have a place to go swimming, be on the swim team, play water polo, pick up Stonegate rules water polo on Sunday nights, that kind of stuff. So let's make sure we're not throwing the baby out with the swimming pool water, so to speak. That would be my concern, but I didn't know exactly what you're talking about. Now I do, and I appreciate that. The other thing on the sales, and I think the 7 days, Mr. Chairman, is probably a pretty good idea. I mean, if somebody wanted to argue about it being 10 days, okay, maybe the 10 days is a little bit better, but you know, if you own some stock and you're not a wealthy person, and we've been going through some of this, not with stock, but with other assets, trying to figure out how we're going to pay for that college education this year. And I mean, that was a discussion my wife and I had this morning before I left town, is what are we going to do?
Thank you, ZPR Consulting, for the gift. He wrote, "Tell them the facts on the First Amendment. Keep up the great work, and I'm glad you're on the treadmill so I don't have to be LOL." Yes, so I think a lot of people do not understand that concept, because I get this a lot in the chats, but it's always from somebody that is clearly on the left. Democrats, for some reason, do not understand how the First Amendment works. It's very strange. And there's even been lawsuits, people that will go after private businesses, if they refuse to make a gay cake or something like that. But I get this so often on these chats that a Democrat wants to tell me that I'm violating the First Amendment when I say, don't say that anymore on my chat. No, it's so ignorant. Please understand how the First Amendment works. It's a really important amendment. It's what makes America like America. The fact that we, as Americans, have the right to voice our opinion about our government and government entities freely, whether it's positive or negative. That's what the First Amendment is about.
Jigger to make sure we get tuition paid and the room and board paid, and what's it going to look like in September when we get through paying all the big fees? And what's the monthly outgo going to be? And so to say that a member who comes to Congress, gets elected and comes to Congress and has a portfolio can't make a decision to sell that stock, and for whatever reasons, but most of the time, most members of Congress are not as wealthy as the public thinks we are. And you got to figure out how you're going to pay for things like college education. I've got two in coming up on August 18th. I'll have two in college at the same time, and we're trying to figure out how to juggle all that. Now, as I said, we don't have the publicly traded stocks, and this bill just deals with those publicly traded stocks. Isn't that correct, Mr. Chairman?
That's accurate.
Yeah. And I think that's appropriate, and I think it's a pretty good idea. The mutual funds is pretty innocuous, too. You can still own the mutual funds, and my other son, who's more financially adept perhaps than I am, my older one, who's now 20, apparently, and we've got to change our financial forms because apparently he got a statement the other day in the mail, and I saw it, and I said, "What's this?" He goes, "Oh, I bought a couple $1,000s out of my summer earnings last year in a mutual fund." I'm like, "Oh, great. I got to amend my public disclosure form to reflect that. It's not big money, but and I think the disclosure's fine. But saying that they can't own or they can't sell is, I think, a little onerous and would discourage good people from running for Congress. Is there anything else you wanted to add as we've had these discussions going on now for a good while?
I appreciate it. Maybe just a couple things to note. And so going back to the 7-day disclosure in how do you get there? Looking at securities law, 10b5-1 plans are how publicly traded companies manage their senior leaders, who by definition have inside information on their company. And so, as I noted earlier, actually enforcing insider trading violations is actually pretty difficult for the DOJ. That's already illegal for all members and all Americans. It's illegal. They should be held accountable. The DOJ should prosecute it. It's difficult to prosecute. The 10b5-1 plan on the publicly traded company side, what in large part they're doing is these pre-disclosures. And what it does is it sets up the evidence to prosecute an insider trading case. So our colleague from Colorado was referencing this. And so if an individual made that public announcement 7 days in advance, it would be pretty easy to show the timeline. Now let's leave that one given person so I don't make an accusation on that given person. But let's say an individual member you could document had inside information on a given topic. They provide a 7-day notice that they're going to make this sale. They then go and make the sale, and then the evidence is pretty clear. That individual engaged in insider trading. That disclosure and that point in time actually gives great leverage to the Department of Justice to hold an individual accountable. It's more difficult under the current scenario because you don't see where that timeline is. And so the reason publicly traded companies put these plans in place for their executives is to root out and prevent individuals from making insider information trades, which are illegal and should be prevented. And so what we tried to do is strike the balance to make sure that individuals who have successful private sector careers, and whatever that word is, whether or not it's successful that you own a local pool and are able to help people swim, or maybe you or your spouse worked at a publicly traded company, and that publicly traded company gave stock as part of the compensation. Or you used it to save up for either your retirement or for the education of your child. It's of the belief that we want to make sure that those individuals are encouraged and able to come to Congress in the same way we can have farmers and veterans come to this institution and serve. Once you're here, you can't acquire new and additional individual shares of stock. I think that's a reasonable.
ZPR Consulting, I love you. You're awesome. Thank you so much. I'm not a lawyer. My husband's a lawyer. And I'm a judge for the night. But I think one day maybe I will be a real judge. We'll see. Because you know what? You don't even have to be a lawyer to be a judge. Actually, you don't even need any legal background whatsoever to be a magistrate judge. You know, remember that poor girl, I think she was from Ukraine in North Carolina. Remember she got like butchered by that black guy on the bus in North Carolina? And the mainstream media didn't want to report on that, just like social media did. But anyways, fun fact, the magistrate judge that let that criminal that had like done so many crimes and he just kept getting released. The magistrate judge that released him this last time before he killed her, I think her name was like Irina or something like that. She was a magistrate judge, and I don't think she had any legal background whatsoever. You need literally zero legal background to be a magistrate judge. I bet you guys didn't know that. Interesting fact, though.
Restriction to put in place. But the core of this bill is it prevents members of Congress from being able to profit off of insider information by putting in place a bright line rule. That is really important. If I can just quickly go back on the photo ID in my home state of Wisconsin, because I think it's relevant. Wisconsin, as I noted, has a reasonably good photo ID bill. I don't think it's perfect. I think it's reasonably good. Now, I think it's reasonably good specifically in comparison to what I view as disastrous states. And in Wisconsin, we can look across a river and across a state line and see a pair of really bad examples. Illinois to our south, Minnesota to our west. In the state of Minnesota, it's been noted in our committee, you were there at the hearing, Mr. Griffith, about how in Minnesota, not only do you not need a photo ID, an individual can come to the polls and vouch for up to 8 other people to vote. We were making lighthearted comments earlier about the never-ending pasta bowl. Imagine rolling in to your local Olive Garden and vouching for 8 other people at your table that they too are who they say they are. Nobody thinks that's rational. So I think Wisconsin has a pretty good ID. We have a Supreme Court that's become hyper-partisan and hyper-liberal. And so thoughtfully, our state assembly and state senate moved through and moved the Wisconsin legislation on photo ID into the Constitution as a mechanism to prevent our Supreme Court from driving forward a partisan liberal agenda. Smart move by our colleagues in the state assembly in state senate. And so we enshrine that in the Constitution. That's good. I don't want our state to look like Minnesota or Illinois, Mr. Chairman. And so that said, I think there's room for improvement. And I flagged my concern specifically as it relates to the standards some of our universities are using when issuing a photo ID. It's a very different standard, for example, than the state of Wisconsin's Department of Transportation has when issuing a driver's license or a state-issued ID. I think we are best served if we move to that higher standard rather than the lower standard allowing universities to issue photo IDs with either limited documentation or giving those IDs to non-citizens or to illegal immigrants. So I appreciate you giving me the time, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Yeah, and I will say this on going back on the stock issue. I think one of the nice things about the 7-day rule, and everything you said was accurate, but one of the things I like about it is if a wealthy member of Congress, more likely to be a senator, but still a wealthy member of Congress, suddenly said, I'm going to sell $1 million or $2 million or $5 million of the share in the XYZ Corporation, that gives the public notice that they're selling, maybe I ought to too, or that they'll take a look at it, or people will take a look. Roll call will certainly report it if there's a 7-day notice. And now that's not happening, and it just happens. And then people say, well, I wish I'd known he was going to sell. I'd have sold too. Anyway, I yield back and now recognize the gentlelady from New Mexico, Ms. Leslie Fernandez, for her time.
Thank you so very much. And I want to go back to this idea.
So I'm genuinely curious why this is a big issue. So somebody wrote, and I've seen this comment multiple times in this chat, and the Dems love this fact, that Trump earned $2.2 billion in the first year of his second term in office. And I think the key word here, balls master, is earned. Because everybody knows that before Donald Trump ran for president, he was a billionaire. He actually was like everybody's favorite billionaire. Like, people loved Donald Trump. He was an entertainer and had hit TV shows, and he was in all these movies, and he was like a household name. So everybody knows, or everybody knew, that Donald Trump was a billionaire before he ran for politics. Do you think that that's going to change? Like, do you think that his businesses are going to stop making money when he became president? I mean, that's kind of ridiculous. Okay, Andy, he said he stole it, not earned. Maybe it's, okay. Like, that's so stupid. Like, why would you even say things like that? Like, it's so pathetic. You don't know him. Okay, crypto scam. Yeah, we hear that a lot, crypto scam. How is it a scam? Why is it a scam? It hasn't even come into fruition yet. You're just saying that because the mainstream media and the Dems made up this propaganda and they just say it over and over again on these hearings. Crypto scam, $2.2 billion, crypto, 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 scam, scam, scam. Everything's a fucking scam, everything's a scam. You guys use this term so much, we don't even know what a real scam is because it's like the boy that cried wolf. It's so pathetic. It's so pathetic. Crypto pump and dump. Okay, sure. That's right. Whatever. I know I can't convince you because you've been hypnotized for years. Orange man bad, I get it. I get it. Could you guys just like back up the propaganda you're saying? It's so annoying. It's really annoying. It's actually annoying and pathetic because we know at this point that it's propaganda, that the media has lied to you and like has done like hurtful things to the American public. Like I said, I expect it from our politicians. I expect them to parrot back the same rhetoric over and over. They all have a script. They all say the same thing, okay? Fine, whatever. But the sad thing to me is the people in here defending it and repeating it over and over and over. It's just so ignorant. It really just makes me believe that Idiocracy, the movie, is coming true on this earth. He is a crook. Okay, I'm annoying. You don't have to be here. You're annoying. I can block you and time you out. You can just leave my stream. You don't have to be here. It's annoying and stupid to just repeat the propaganda over and over. And then when we call you out, anybody in this chat calls you out and asks you to prove it or to give us information, either they get called racist or you just continue to say the same words over and over. It's really sad and pathetic. No, Andy wrote, no, you people fucked everyone over with your stupidity. Oh, okay, yeah, that doesn't even make sense. Like, TDS, yeah, you guys have TDS. You guys literally have TDS. It's a real thing. It's a real phenomenon. It is unhinged the way that people talk about Trump, the way that they can hear one word and be triggered and just go off the rails, the way that you can have facts literally in your face telling you the truth. But because you have TDS, you cannot believe it, and you just have to stick with your lies and your propaganda and repeat it over. I feel really bad that you're so stupid that you were hypnotized. And I pray for you guys. I really do. I pray, first of all, I pray that you're not NPCs or bots, because probably half of you are. But I pray that you will see the light. Because what an awful way to live. To really think that one person is responsible for all of your hate and misery. It's just a sad way to live. So I really hope and pray that you see the light one day.
That this is the Stop Insider Trade.
Or maybe Pfizer will come out with like a shot for TDS or like a drug to cure your TDS. Then maybe you guys can live a normal life. I bet if Pfizer came up with that, you would definitely take it.
Trading Act. And we went over earlier that trading involves both the purchase and the sale. You cannot have trading without the sale. And Chairman, you said that the purpose of this was to make sure that Congress people don't make a profit off of information we get here from serving. Is that, did I recall you saying that correctly?
Yeah, as it relates to publicly traded company stock. Yeah.
Let's go back to the question of, do you make a profit when you buy a stock?
No.
You make a profit when you do what?
You may.
You sell the stock.
No, only
That's
if you
when
sell for a
the
profit.
stock. So
You could lose.
To clarify, you could lose, but that's your chance for making a profit, is the sale of the stock, right?
That's your chance.
And your Stop Insider Trading Act does not prohibit the sale of stocks.
Right, but it prevents you from profiting off of the sale.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, this is so dumb. I cannot believe. I think it's been 30 minutes that these people have gone back and forth and talked about the sale of stocks. Okay, just change the bill then. This is stupid. This is really stupid. They're never, ever going to vote to stop insider trader. Let's just be real. This really is like political theater. But like, they're not even doing a good job. Like, it's not even like a good, like, passionate argument. They're just literally going back and forth and talking about the stock of sales. The sale of stocks.
Then you can profit
With insider
as much as you
information.
want.
I would
You can
disagree.
profit as much as you want. As long as you
disagree.
own that stock, you can profit. And that's where Democrats are going, is that we should not, Congress people, if you make the choice to come here, there should be a vehicle for you to be able to divest of individual stocks. That's what the bill that Joe Neguse and Chip Roy introduced. That's what the bill that we have presented. That's what the bill that Democrats offered as an alternative does. Is that correct, Ranking Member?
Absolutely requires divestiture. And may I just add, the notion that a 7-day waiting period, and I appreciate Mr. Griffith's comments, but honestly, I don't think of a member of Congress who learned that, it's likely maybe Boeing instead of Northrop Grumman was going to get a military contract, and they owned Northrop Grumman and wanted to get rid of their stock before that was acknowledged. Saying I sold $10,000 worth of stock a month before anybody knows about it, and I acknowledge it 7 days, that does virtually nothing. There's nobody sitting around watching in real time what members of Congress are doing respectfully, and there's no way to track that.
So Jonathan made an interesting comment that it seems like people like. Jonathan wrote, require military service for Congress at this point. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I really do. I also think that, and I talked about this a week ago, we need to consider bringing in candidates that are not lawyers. I think a lot of people feel like, okay, a lawyer would be a good congressman or senator because they understand the law, and part of being a congressman and a senator is reading, interpreting the laws, and creating the laws. But that's not actually a lot of what Congress does. Really, a huge piece of Congress is creating the budget and managing the budget. And let's be real, our Congress does a terrible job of managing a budget. And to PTSD's point, they have to have a meeting about a meeting about a meeting about a meeting about a meeting to talk about a meeting about having a meeting about if they're going to go over or when they go over the budget and what they should do about it, okay? This is what our Congress does. It's really sad, and it's such a waste of time. But how pathetic is it that our Congress, they create their own budget, okay? So they know how much money that they have. They create a budget, and then they can't stick with it at all. They're constantly going over budget, and then we have like these government shutdowns where very important people that work for the government don't get paid, like our military, our active duty military. They don't get paid during the government shutdowns. But guess who does get paid? Congress and Senate. They keep getting paid even when they shut down our government and argue amongst themselves like lawyers love to do, because lawyers are just like pigs in shit when it comes to arguing. That's what lawyers love to do, let's be real. So we're allowing our congressmen to just argue back and forth, loving every second of it because they're getting paid to do it, while our active duty military and all of our other government workers are under financial strain and have to continue working without getting paid. And this is who we continue to elect to Congress. And we need to stop. We need to do a better job as American citizens in electing our congressmen and Senate. And, I think maybe people that are out here listening, think about running for Congress or Senate. We need good people. And we need people that have financial backgrounds, insurance backgrounds. And now I'm not talking about like owning being an insurance carrier or board member. No. Like a insurance agent, somebody that understands like insurance law. Because our insurance system and our healthcare system needs a major overhaul. But yep, engineers. It would even be like amazing to have like some blue collar workers or like somebody that owns like a plumbing business or something in Congress, like really representative of the people. You know, we talk about DEI and, you know, we want Congress and the legal system to look like America. Okay, if we're going to go there, shouldn't we have people in Congress that are from all walks of life? Why is it always like either, you know, billionaires or attorneys? And the majority of them are attorneys. But I think we really need to figure out a better system. We need more diversity in our Congress and our Senate. And it has nothing to do with the color of their skin or their gender. We need more diversity when it comes to careers and backgrounds and education, because they are not representing us at all. Like, how many of you are hardworking Americans that have to actually stick to a budget? Like, what would happen if you spent too much money and you couldn't pay your bills? What would happen? Our government does this all the time. And then they lecture us and they punish us. And we have to deal with like credit scores, which is another story and another chat, but it's pathetic. And then we have to deal with doing our taxes, and, you know, God forbid you do your taxes and you get something wrong. You know, the IRS wants to audit you and punish you, and nothing happens to our Congress when they go over their budget time and time again. Just saying.
To your point, you only make the money if you sell at a price that's higher than what you bought it at. So you can only make the money, and it's true, you can lose money too, but you get to control the timing of when that happens if you're not required to divest, right? I mean, so that's, and by the way, if you already own stock and there's a dividend, you can buy more of that. So the notion that you can't buy is not true. Now, it is more narrow, but the buying, holding, and selling of stock is still allowed under this. On the public side, on the private side, there's no, they, you
Right,
know,
and
haven't
I
done
think-
anything here at all.
Right, and I think the concern is, my
So
colleague
I'm not
from
even gonna
Pennsylvania
pause this
referenced
when I
it
talk.
earlier.
I'm just gonna talk
that
over them
maybe
'cause I
what
just
you
wanna
want to
get
do is maybe
through it.
lose less, right?
stupid.
And you know, here's the article that said that when you're going to be making these big decisions about what happens, we had a colleague that a week before he voted to significantly cut Medicaid, and I'm quoting from an article here dated 11/20/25, the first on NBC, Mr. Chairman, which I'd seek to enter into the record. A week before he voted to significantly cut Medicaid by $1 trillion, this representative dumped 6 figures worth of stock in a quartet of companies that manage nearly half of all Medicaid enrollees in the country. Now, Chairman,
Without objection.
your bill would do nothing to have prevented this sale, correct?
I would actually disagree with that.
You disagree with that? You,
They would do nothing. I think that's an inaccurate statement of the bill.
okay, so would it have, he would be able to have sold this stock? You would have had.
Okay, I know I said I was going to talk over, but it's impossible to talk over this lady. But Michael made an amazing comment. He wrote, "The bigger problem is simply the voters. We, the people, are simply lazy. Most people don't put the research into each candidate or for state or local policies they're voting for." And Michael, this is like the best comment of the evening. You are so correct. Oh my gosh. Please, I'm gonna read this again. "The bigger problem is simply the voters. We, the people, are simply lazy. Most people don't put in the research into each candidate or for state or local policies they're voting for." And that is so true. And I'm not gonna even comment, because whether we're lazy or not, we are lazy. Let's be real. We're lazy. We're lazy about a lot of things as Americans. But we need to stop being lazy, as to Michael's point. Local elections are actually far more important than presidential and federal elections, because your local elections directly affect you. And it's really rather sad how most elections are won. So I live in a county, and on Tuesday, we have our elections coming up, the primaries, and we're voting for a few other things. The tactic and how people win elections in my area is they send out these mailers, these like huge postcards, and some of them, just have the person's face on it with the talking points. But actually, the most mailers I got are like the anti-candidate mailers, where it like disparages, like a PAC is disparaging the candidate they don't want to win. And historically, the candidate that mails out the most mailers tends to win the election. Now, I don't think people realize how expensive these mailers are. They're like tens of thousands of dollars, because you got to print them out and you got to mail them. And, people are mailing them to maybe every voter in their area. And it's kind of sad that that's how elections are won. The person that sends out the most mailers, or the PAC that has the most disparaging mailers about a candidate, that candidate's going to lose. But how many people really look into the local politicians? They have debates all the time where you can go, they're public, and you can watch the debates and watch the people talk about the points. But very few people actually come to them. I go to my local political meetings. I want to know what's going on. I want to know who I'm voting for. But, the last one I went to a couple weeks ago, maybe there were 50 people in the room, maybe 50. And I live in a county with over 300,000 people, so that's not a lot, right? But most people have no idea what they're voting for. And some people will just vote because the person has an R or a D next to their name. But these candidates, they don't pop up out of nowhere. And this is the important part. It starts with your local elections. Sometimes we wonder, gosh, how is this person in office? This person is terrible. How have they been in office for so long? How? And the truth is, it starts with the local politics and voting. And most people are not paying attention, number one. Two, most people don't even vote in elections that aren't like a major presidential election. The voter turnout is very small, believe it or not. But it's so important to vote in those local elections and know what you're voting for. And if people would just wake up and do their due diligence, our country would look a lot better. But I don't know if it's just that people are lazy, or sometimes I think that people just want to be victims. They want to have a shitty government. They want shitty rules and laws. Because if they have that, then they can just blame that for their shitty lives. They don't have to take responsibility for their lives because, oh, well, I have a terrible politician. Oh, well, this law got passed and that's going to affect me. So you can just blame something else and you don't have to take responsibility. I mean, people do it all the time with Trump. Oh, the economy's bad. I hate Donald Trump. He's so awful. I'm blaming him for this and that. And, it's just easier to have TDS than take responsibility for your own life and your own choices. And Michael wrote again, I have seen so many times signature collectors walking up to people and just simply give their simple rundown on bills that should be put on the ballot. And most people just sign it based on what they say. Yep, you're right. You're exactly right. I'll tell you a story, Michael. So a few years back here in Florida, Ron DeSantis wrote a bill and everybody in the country was like up in arms about it. It was all over the news because they nicknamed the bill the Don't Say Gay bill, okay? So all over the mainstream media, they were talking about how Ron DeSantis, wrote this bill that wouldn't allow people to say gay or homosexual or something like that, okay? So my kid's nanny was over at the house and she tends to lean left, and she was telling me how she was upset about this bill and she thinks it's awful, and she was giving me all these talking points that she saw on one of the news stations. And I just looked at her and I asked her, I'm like, have you read that bill? Have you actually read the actual bill? First of all, it's not called the Don't Say Gay bill. And I told her what the bill was called. And later that night, I sent her a link so she could read the actual bill. Well, she came back to me the next day and she's like, oh my God, you're right. I read that bill and that's nothing like what the news was reporting. And basically what the bill was about, it was just a bill that put provisions in for school teachers that you could not talk about certain sexual comments and topics to kids under a certain age, okay? And to anybody with common sense that actually cares about children, that bill made sense. You know, as a mom, I don't want my 5-year-old child learning about sex and homosexuality or even knowing their teacher's, preference. I don't think that they need to know that. I'm not ready to have that conversation, with my child at that age, okay? And that's what that bill was about. But the news completely demonized it and tried to make people believe that it was about something else. And all those people that were outraged, they never read the actual bill. So, Michael, the point of this was, you're absolutely right. We need to read things as Americans. We live in the best age ever, the age of technology. We all have these amazing smartphones. We have a little library, a little encyclopedia in our hands. We have the ability to read all of this stuff for ourselves. And I'm not talking about just doing ChatGPT and asking it a question. Please don't do that, because AI is not perfect at all. It makes a lot of mistakes. It really does. But you can go to the actual source with your phone, with your laptop, with your computer, and you can read things for yourself. And if more people did that, I think our country would look a lot different. But we don't do that. So many of us, we just rely on these little tidbits we hear on social media or on the news, and then we repeat it back. And we don't even realize that the things that we're being told, first of all, aren't even true. And two, are purposely meant to get us enraged and arguing with each other, so we don't actually see what's going on. We don't look at the corruption. We don't look at the actual fraud, because we're too busy yelling at each other and pointing the finger. So, Michael, again, your comment was the best comment of the night. And I really hope that everybody watching, if you haven't had your local election yet or during the midterms, please do your due diligence. Really investigate the candidates for yourself. Read the actual bills that you're voting on. Don't rely on the media or anybody else to tell you what it's about. It just takes a little bit of extra time, and I know we all have time to do that.
No, you would have provided public notice of the sale.
But he would have been able to sell it. It would not have prevented it. It might have allowed the world to know before a newspaper article came out, but it would have still allowed it. And
Well, it depends on the timeline of that sale. Of course, 7 days notice would require 7 days to elapse.
All your bill does is fill out a form, and this is the thing, what the American public is mad, and they are mad as hell about, is the idea that elected officials, both in Congress, in the Senate, in the White House, are making big bucks, and they are the ones.
That's actually why this bill is so important. It's about ending the profiting off of insider information. So you exactly nailed what they're upset about, and this is what the bill actually accomplishes.
It does not end the profit, because the profit is at the sale, and this does not prevent the sale. You are allowed to continue.
Only if you don't believe in market forces.
I'm going to move on, Ranking Member.
Well, may I just make
Yeah,
one
sure.
additional point? Even if you had 7 days' notice, let's say the press did know. They came and said, hey, we realize that you sold all your stock in some company. you're going to say it's because I was diversified, or it's not likely you're going to say it's because I learned that the United States government is going to be buying. I mean, it doesn't disclose anything. Yeah, it gives, I guess, the press a couple of days, if they happen to be following your specific trades, and gives them a little bit of a head start on trying to figure out what you were doing. But let's be clear. No one is going to say because I had information which led me to sell. But the good news is,
All right, I'm getting a little tired of them talking about the same points over and over, so I'm gonna wrap this up for tonight. But I want to read Michael's comments because I have another comment after that. So Michael wrote, "It's exactly like going to most churches. People follow the words coming from the pulpit versus reading the words straight from the Bible and reading the Bible through its entirety." You're absolutely right. And I want to leave you guys with this. So, I don't know, lately I've been really into watching shows about like medieval, well, not, I don't know if it's medieval or Renaissance, maybe it's not, like as one with the church. And the message is that the king is ordained by God, okay? And so all of the things that they do to keep the power and keep the crown, they say, you know, they're doing it for God, okay? They're doing it because they were ordained by God, so they have to do anything to keep their power, even if it means killing innocent kids, okay? I feel like that's what we have going on right now in our country with our Congress and our Senate, and maybe the president too. I don't know. I don't think Donald Trump is bad at all. I'm sorry. I really love Donald Trump. I think he's doing a lot of good. I know that that's not popular with everybody, but I'm a big fan of his. But what I do see is people in Congress and in the Senate that are thwarting his efforts, that purposely go against him and create drama and say nonsense to thwart the good things that Trump is trying to do. And one of those things is trying to secure our elections, okay? I feel like a lot of the people that we have in Congress and the Senate are similar to those people that are portrayed in, you know, the royal times, or I guess they still have royalty in England, that they will do anything to keep their power. They'll do anything to enrich themselves, and they don't care who it hurts. And they've brainwashed themselves or convinced themselves that they're doing it because God ordained them. So they have to hold on to that power no matter what. And I feel like that is what's currently going on with our government, that we have elected people. I think some of them we didn't even elect. They just cheat to win. And they just do whatever suits them, regardless of how it actually is going to affect the country. And they don't really have a clear vision, and they don't even really realize how much harm they're doing to the American people. That's how I see it. I know it's controversial, but I'm going to leave you with that for the night. Not sure if I'll be back here. I don't think I'll be back tomorrow night, but I'll definitely be here streaming on Sunday night. Maybe we'll actually get through this particular hearing. This is our third day doing it. We'll see. But I want to thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. We had so many amazing people in the chat. Thank you so much to my two new moderators. You guys did a great job. And thank you, Michael, for your awesome comments. And thank you for the new members and ZPR Consulting. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. You freaking made my night. Thank you so much. My email, guys, is in my bio. Feel free to email me, connect with me. I'd love to send some of you guys some of the new mugs or get your opinion on some of the new stuff coming. So email me, mrsdavethelawyer@gmail.com. I actually do respond to those emails. But anyways, have a great weekend. God bless America.